It is time to look at the positive outlook of Detroit sports. I'm going to focus on one today. We're going to look at the Detroit Pistons. How have they been able to transform themselves from one of the worst teams in NBA history to a playoff team in 1 year? Last year was probably one of the hardest years I've had to endure as a Piston fan. Basically watching your team lose every single game they play, especially for months. There was months they did not win one game. What had to happen? The first thing they had to do was move on from coaching. J.B. Bickerstaff comes in after basically resurfacing the Cleveland Cavaliers after LeBron left from one of the worst teams in the East to a top 4 seed. Monty Williams goes, didn't seem that interested halfway through the year, especially with some of his roster decisions. He gets fired, JB comes in. Another key thing, Langdon coming in as the GM versus Troy Weaver. Now, Troy Weaver was someone who was very fixated on always having too many centers on the roster. We never had enough shooting. Langdon comes in and goes, you know what? First press conference, the man was engaged. He was locked in. He knew that this was unacceptable. He admitted Cade and Ivy are the future of this team. Something Monty Williams was not able to do. He was not a big fan of Jaden Ivey. With a solid, capable GM that has a bright future, and with a coach that has history of turning franchises around, this comes into the moves over the offseason. So you got your additions and you have your subtractions. Let's start with the subtractions. So last year's team is terrible. What did you do to fix it? You got to get rid of a lot of the roster because they clearly were not good enough and capable enough of winning. So the first thing you did, Bojan Bogdanovic, you had to get rid of him. Couple of reasons. He was too old. He was an absolute liability on the defensive end. He was never available. He was injured all the time. Didn't help us win late games. I remember they used to pick him out every last 2 minutes of the game. They would get a matchup with him. They'd score on him easily. He was just not a capable defender. Next guy, Evan Fournier. These are, by the way, these are key players on the Pistons last year. Evan Fournier is terrible. He's not in the league right now for a reason. 27% from 3 last year. Not a good defender. Terrible player, not in the league. Another horrendous player, not in the league, was a starter. Killian Hayes was starting over Jaden Ivey for half of the season. I will never understand that. Isaiah Livers, he was also a starter for a decent amount. He's not in the league either, from Michigan. James Wiseman was our starter for a decent amount at the end of the year. James Wiseman's on the Pacers. He tore his Achilles in the first game. I was actually at that game. So you get rid of these 5 pieces. Who do you add? Malik Beasley has been the best pickup this season. 39% from 3. Very clutch this season with Cade. When Cade is double teamed and you need someone to kick to for a 3 to win or 3 to put the game away like he did against the Knicks, he has been doing it this year. He's found a home being a guy that can take as many threes as he wants as an ultimate green light, and it was not as much pressure coming onto a Piston team that had just won 14 games. I think it was a perfect pickup. He was trying to get back to when he was on, I think, like Utah, shooting 40% from 3 for a couple of years. One of the best three-point shooters at that time. Tobias Harris, who was one of my favorite players when he was on the team the first time, hasn't really found a complete stride yet. He's around the 15-point-per-game average. I'd want to see him get around 17, 18 since he is our highest-paid player. Solid rebounder. He has played enough games and enough seasons at this point where at the end of the game, he does make right decisions. Like, I don't really think he's cost us many games. Like, he's just had games where he's had bad shooting. So if you go by the course of the game, he might have. But I think he's a good veteran presence to help us close games. And just someone in the huddle to calm guys like Cade and Ivy down if they're getting a little overzealous on certain plays. Tim Hardaway Jr. I think Tim Hardaway Jr. and Beasley are similar. Beasley's been better this year, but Hardaway recently has kind of found his stride of winning us random games with just being a streaky three-point shooter, which is kind of what he's been his whole career. But now that he's a veteran and he can shoot a pretty good free throw percentage, he's a guy that can also help you close out a game. And he's a guy that Cade is able to drive, and they have to watch him. It gives Cade a better driving lane. Whereas last year, if you're passing to Killian Hayes and Asar Thompson with both of them on the floor at once, you don't have much spacing. And with Duran there too. So there's really no spacing. Ron Holland, our rookie. Ron Holland's just a guy that you can see the potential that he is a scorer, and the three-point shot is looking a little bit better of recent memory. I still think that's going to take a little bit of time, but I do see the potential with him The next piece, Cade Cunningham has asserted himself as an absolute star to a borderline superstar. And this is something I didn't know if it would happen that fast, given the fact that he didn't have a great team around him. Now that you've surrounded him with those pieces, Cade has turned into one of the best passers in the league. He's third in assists this year. Cade this year, this is his stats, 2 points higher in points per game, 2 assists higher per game than last year, 2.2 rebounds higher than last year, 3-point percentage up to 37. Last year was 34. And the field goal percentage slightly left. So he's becoming a more efficient player. He is a very capable defender. Sometimes takes the tough assignments of guarding like a Kevin Durant. He's guarded LeBron in games. They beat the Lakers twice this year, and he was almost a primary defender on LeBron. So he is taking the tough assignments along with running the entire offense. So Cade should be an all-star this year. Most likely will be. He's starting to get that national recognition as one of the better players in the league. The next guy is a huge reason that he's taken that jump. Now, he is injured right now, but he has played 30 games and deserves to be mentioned. Jaden Ivey's numbers have improved a lot. Jaden Ivey's averaging 2 more points per game. 7.3% higher in three-point percentage this year. So he's at 41%. That was something people had a question mark about. I don't know how sustainable that is, but if he's around a 35, 36% three-point shooter, with the athleticism and speed he has going downhill where guys can't stay in front of him, I mean, he's going to be a very, very good player in the league. He's going to be a second option averaging over 20 a game. That's something that you can't just gloss over, that the Pistons have an elite backcourt for the years coming up. And they've had it this year. With him being out right now, the Pistons are kind of relying on guys like Malik Beasley, Tim Hardaway Jr., Marcus Sasser to kind of fill that role. And they do because they all can shoot threes. The last main thing I want to mention is just the team stats in general. So last year, the Pistons were 27th in points per game, and they were 26th in defensive points allowed. This year, they're 15th and 16th, respectively, in those. So they have changed themselves from the bottom 5 team to a playoff team. And that's a massive jump, going 12 spots and 10 spots. Obviously, with the winning, there's just 2 more things I want to point out. Pistons, I think this is a small factor in it, but if your attendance goes from 20th last year, which I'm shocked it was even 20th with how bad they were, to 14th this year, you're adding more you're selling more tickets, getting more fans to the stadium, making more noise, makes it a harder place to play. It's another factor of winning more games. This year they're over-under. I honestly believe this was eventually going to light a fire under this team. Over-under 25.5 wins this year. They already have 22. That's pretty much it with this video. I'm very excited for the future of this team. Comment below what your guys' predictions are for the rest of this Pistons season. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace. Remember, like and subscribe, so I'll make more videos like this.